What's up, my people? It's your host, Wray, of the Wray Show. And today I have a special guest for you. He goes by the name of Silas Percell, and he's a co-host hit podcast, Factual Opinions. How you doing, Silas?
I'm doing great. Al, how are you, sir?
I'm always well, man. Never complain.
Okay.
Another day on earth, man.
Blessings to you.
Appreciate it, man. Blessings to you as well. So, as I stated, you're a co-host of the Factual Opinions Podcast. Where did the idea to start the podcast come from? And I said, where did the idea come from with the podcast, and who's on the show with you?
All right. So the idea of starting a podcast, podcast became popular, but I really gravitated towards Joe Budden, the Joe Budden podcast. And like back in the day, probably when I was like 19, 18, something like that, me and another co-host on the show, Vern, we had a vlog on YouTube. We only did like maybe 3 episodes or something like that. It was called the Virus and Burning Vlog. Don't look it up because it was rough draft, but I always wanted to talk like pop culture, sports, things of that nature. And then to me, like with the Joe Budden podcast, that was a huge influence and motivated me to actually want to do a podcast myself. So that's where most of my motivation came from.
And I know you and I talked about it, 2 years ago, about creating, like actually getting it on the floor, getting on the ground running and doing it. So you're actually at the point now where you actually got it going. Y'all are 10, 15 episodes in?
Something like that. Fun fact, though, for you fans out there, Wray was supposed to be an original member of the Factual Opinion Podcast. It didn't have that name at the time, but he was supposed to be a member. He turned me down, and that's fine. He's still my guy, but he turned me down, and he started his own show, so congrats to him. And our shows are both on the air and running, so it worked out for the best of both of us.
So to go back on that, you did ask me, and that was during basketball season. And
I did.
Just like every year where you'd be like, hey, man, I'm trying to do something for my birthday, blase. And I'm like, I can't even do it right now. So that's why I had to go and do my own thing, because I'm like, I can't do it right now. And you were like, are you trying to do the show? And I was thinking y'all were recording at the time. But come to find out, I don't even think y'all were recording back then, were you?
Not at the time, no.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was just trying to get off the ground, figure out what we needed to get started, and so forth. And then people that you think would be a good mixture. So, and I thought you would be a good mixture because, we cool, but we not like identical. We have similar interests, but, we both laid back, but I'm more out there, and you a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
So I thought that might work.
Yeah, exactly. So what would you say is your favorite part of creating the whole process of the podcast?
My favorite part would just be speaking freely. With certain restrictions, of course, but just talking your talk and just expressing how you feel, and just being yourself, and the feedback you get from people that listen to the show. Like you were in attendance just on this past recording, and just the feedback that I get, it's weird when you get good feedback. Like I gravitate more towards the negative feedback because I want to get better. I'm my toughest critic. So when I get positive feedback, I don't really know how to receive it. So if I just, seem like, oh, this dude didn't even care that I said, yo, your show, you know what I mean? Sorry for cussing on your show. But, and it ain't that. It's just that maybe I'm not subscribed to it. I don't feel like it's good, but that's just me being me. It may be a great show to you guys. So.
Yeah, I think it's a really good podcast because I listen to, I won't say a whole bunch, but I listen to, like you said, Joe Budden podcast. I listen to yours. I listen to like some sports podcasts, and I think y'all are headed in the right direction. So with that process, you saying like you don't know how to take the good compliments of the show, like you don't know how to take it. I think a lot of that has to do with just the way society is. Like the only type of feedback we expect ever is like negative. Like somebody's gonna be hating, like saying, "Oh, y'all should do this, y'all should do that," and it's hardly ever, "Hey man, y'all doing a good job on this. I love when I heard this." So from my aspect, somebody who has their own show as well, that's what I like to give you feedback, to let you know like you're doing a good job, because it's not enough out there. As people say, you give people their flowers when it's too late. So that's just my way of giving you guys your flowers. So shout out to Mike and Vern as well. I really think y'all got something great going. So sticking with the podcast, I know you guys started out with 4 members, and now you're down to 3. Are you all still looking for a 4th member for the podcast?
That's a complicated question, because if we just working like we are now and it's just flowing, then we might as well just keep where we are. So technically, yes, we are still looking for that 4th member, specifically a female member, just to add that female dynamic, because we bring up a lot of topics, dealing with like sex and relations and things like that between a man and a woman. And we can only speak from the male perspective. So when we do at least attempt to speak how we think females, how their mind operates, we may be stepping out of bounds. So I would like, not just me, but me, Mike, and Vern would like to have, a female, if the fit is right, to be part of the Factual Opinion Podcast. If the fit is
having that right fit is what it's all about. If you ask me, my personal opinion, I think y'all are fine with having just those 3 people. You have you, who's gonna stir the pot, and you have Vern, who's gonna come with a funny story, or if he doesn't have a story, somehow you gonna put him into a weird situation, and then
he can't back away from me.
So and then you have Mike, who is like, the PC, like well spoken. Sometimes he's gonna ruffle feathers too, but it's not to the extent of you or Vern. So I think y'all, balance each other out well. And then you have Kyle, who produces the show, and he chimes in every once in a while. So I think from my perspective that the 3 of y'all are a pretty good trio. So speaking of that,
which is what I heard as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of that trio, how did you guys link up? How did you meet?
All right, so Vern, the wild one, he's my cousin. So we're related by blood. My dad, is his mom's brother. So we're related. And Mike, I went to school with Mike, and we've been boys ever since. So, and that's how we know each other. So, and of course, Vern knows Mike through me. So yeah, that's pretty much how we link.
Nice. And you would think you guys have known each other. Obviously, you know Vern your whole life, but you would think Mike was like a cousin or a close relative as well. Speaking of y'all closeness, you come from Camden, New Jersey. So
Facts.
You always tell me of this story of when you left Jacksonville right after middle school when you went to Camden. What was that experience like in high school for those 4 years?
Woo. All right, so done with middle school. So out of the blue, my mom, rest in peace, she I went back to, I used to go to Jersey for the summer. So I went up there for the summer, whatever year that was. And like 2 weeks later, she came up here with my little brother and sister and said, "Oh, you know, we're living here now." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. You can stay here. I'm gonna go back to Duval and finish out this high school run that I'm ready to take on." And that didn't pan out. I wind up staying. I wanted to stay with Vern because I would frequent, hang with him most of the time. So I wanted to stay with him and his mom. And somehow that just didn't happen. So I wind up staying in Camden, New Jersey, and going to Camden High. Shout out to the Panthers. And it was just different, man. I tell people all the time, coming through the Camden High doors was like going through an airport. You have the little bag scanner that you have to drop your bag in, and you walk through a metal detector. Make sure nothing goes off, and then even when you step through, the security winds you down and pats you down before you can go to your class every day. So that was just different. And I mean, Camden, New Jersey has a bad rep and I mean, I can't lie. You can look up the stats, but it's a dangerous place. It was just different being back after being gone for like 5 years and then going back. I didn't really know nobody outside of family anymore. You went to elementary school with these kids and whatever the case may be, and you don't see them again. Back then we didn't have cell phones and social media, so you fall out of touch with all these people. So I was basically, when I first moved to Jacksonville, that's how I felt. Like I was in unknown territory once again. So it was an experience.
So right now you're back in Jacksonville. So how did you get back here after high school was over?
So when I was done with high school, I wasn't doing nothing. I was on my mom. I came down. I left and I came back, and unbeknownst to me, my room was taken. So, and I was 18. I was sleeping on my mom's couch, in the living room. I had no bedroom, and so I just said to myself one day, I'm gonna go back to Jacksonville. Whatever I got to do to make it work, I'm gonna find a way to make it work. And I mean, it wasn't pretty when I moved back here. I mean, the conditions, it was crazy, but I was determined to get off my mom's couch and just do something with my time, get a job, make a way for myself. And since 12 years later, now we got the Factual Opinions Podcast. So, you know what I mean?
What a story. So tell me this, because I'm sure other people out there are wondering. So you graduate, you're finished with high school, and then without any acknowledgement, anything like that, you have a room up there in Camden, and now you don't have the room anymore. You got to sleep on your mom's couch.
Yeah, I went and lived with like Vern and his mom for like 2 weeks, which felt like forever, but it was like about 2 weeks, 17 days to be exact, a little over 2 weeks. And it wasn't my intention on coming back, but it was just a lot of complications at the time that it just wasn't going to work. So I went back, called a Greyhound, took that 25-hour drive, however long it is. That's a long-ass drive. And went back, and my room was occupied. And rightfully so. I mean, I wasn't expected to come back. So, I mean, as an 18-year-old, you're like, well, what am I going to do? I'm in a city where, and I love Camden. That's my home. But I just felt like you don't go anywhere mostly being from there. Most people around you, this is it. This is all you get. You know what I mean? And I knew there was more opportunities outside of here. So I wanted to go, just get out of that and just do something with myself. And I landed back here, man. I was determined to come back and do something. So sleep on the couch wasn't for me.
I feel you, man. If you don't you know, if you don't like your situation or if you don't, you know, not happy, I can say that that's the best thing to do. Put it into your own hands and change your situation. And as you said, today you got the Factual Opinions podcast. Um, so going back to the podcast, um, you know, I probably already said this, but my favorite character on the show is Vern. Has Vern always been like this?
Yeah, Vern's a wild boy, man. He's a wild boy. These stories are maybe a little bit more wild because he's single now. He fresh on the market after being in a relationship for I think at least maybe 10 years, close to it. So I mean, he out here and now he got some trials and errors. You know what I mean? And he gonna learn his ways. He'll learn the errors in his ways, but he's getting there. He's a young pup. You let a puppy out free after being caged for all day, and they're gonna go wild. And these are the stories, man. These are the stories of his life.
Shout out to Vern again. When y'all get a chance, go and check out that podcast, man. Factual Opinions Podcast.
Factual Opinion Podcast. There's multiple podcasts with the same name. You won't see with the same logo. Factual Opinion Podcast, man. And follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Factual Pod. Appreciate it.
You heard it. So going from the podcast to family life, because I know having a podcast, you have a job that you're responsible for. You're married, you have a wife, you have a kid. How do you balance out having to devote time to the podcast, to your job, and family life?
You make time for everything. Only thing it gets weird when your wife start asking you things that you said on the podcast, and I'm just like, listen, man, everything is just for content purposes. Not saying things are a lie, but you if you gonna support me, you just gotta let me be me. If I don't and we came to an understanding agreement. If I don't disrespect you, embarrass you. Not in a funny way, but just flat out embarrassed, then everything is cool, and it's been cool from there. But yeah, I mean, we record once a week and release it a few days later, so that gives me time in between to have my family time and also dedicate it. It's not overwhelming. To dedicate that one time frame to record, but then outside of that, making sure all of the things line up, so it doesn't really intervene. It's a good balance. It works thus far. We'll see.
Because I know once the podcast take off, there's gonna be more time you're gonna have to devote to it, and I guess you have to figure it out then.
If the podcast does take off, I mean, then that's the main focus. That's what's gonna keep the food on the table and the clothes on my baby back. So, I mean, then I can really dedicate the time throughout the day to elevate the podcast in ways I probably couldn't imagine. So, cheers to that. If that was to ever happen. I'm not in it for the fame or the money, but I'm not going to be mad if that happens. I'm not going to turn it down. I'm not going to say no. Spotify, want to cut me a check, holla at me.
Yeah, Spotify, get at them. And
Shout out.
else I want to say, I want to make a distinction. What Silas has and what he does, what him, Mike, and Vern do, that's the actual podcast. It's audio, like digital audio show. What I have is a variety show, not a podcast. I have quite a few people like, oh, I like your podcast. I've seen your podcast. What I do is not what they do. I would never want to step in their lane. Like, I don't want to step on their toes and be like, oh, yeah, I do a podcast, and it's just video. But what they do is podcast. So I have so much respect for people who all the equipment they have to buy into and all the time they put to create the podcast. So again, I am not a podcast. So
You're not a podcaster. And you can show you're an editor. You can show the clip of the virus and burning vlog. Just look on YouTube, you'll find it.
Two B's, we in the building. Who we talking about? Person news. Chris Breezy. He's back. He's better than ever. He got a new song. He's a changed man. He's a changed man. He is sorry. Y'all forgive him. America forgive him. And also just forgive him.
Y'all talked about it on one of the early episodes, and you were like, "Nah, don't y'all go see." Oh, I'm gonna go look it up. I typed it in, and I said, "Wow, you two." When that like 10, 11, 12?
Bray's hanging. Yeah, that was like 2010. So that was about 10 years ago.
Wow.
So there's always been a passion of mine. It's just the podcast seemed like an easier outlet than on YouTube. So,
especially now, you got a lot more. As you said, Joe Budden, you got Joe Rogan, you got plenty of people who set the the blueprint that you can follow.
I'm glad you say that. I just want to say one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, everybody don't need a podcast. I'm tired of seeing this person, that person, this celebrity, that celebrity. Everybody don't need a podcast. Seriously. And y'all might think my podcast is trash. I'm not being self-centered. I'm not being a narcissist. I'm not being any of that. But I'm just letting you know, once this lane get flooded, it's hard to weed out the good ones. You see what I'm saying? So I only listen to the Joe Budden podcast. I used to listen to the Brilliant Idiots with Charlamagne and Andrew Schultz, but I can relate more to the Joe Budden podcast. They talk how I talk. I understand their lingo. I understand their stories are hilarious, things like that. But everybody and their mama want a podcast now, and it's just like some of y'all just ain't cut out for it. So I'm here to tell you now, don't waste your time. Continue, Al. My bad.
So in a much nicer way, find your lane. That's the point that Silas is trying to drive home. Find your lane. Don't do it because
Al Ray's the more reserved one. That's what I mean by that. He calls me the pot stirrer, and he's reserved. I'm not trying to be mean.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Exactly. It's just the choice of words. But find your lane. Do something that you have a passion for. Like I have a passion for interviewing people. I have a passion for like blogging, like different stuff like that. And then you have Silas on the other hand, who might can burn with podcasting. So find out what you enjoy. Don't do it because your favorite celebrity is doing it, or because your cousin told you to do it, or your mom or dad told you to do it. Do what makes you happy, so you don't live a miserable life. That's what through the 3 months of this show I've learned is do what makes you happy. And from the looks of it, I can tell that Silas and the crew are happy with the product they're putting out. So
yes, sir.
With that product, do y'all ever, amongst y'all three, do y'all ever have like your doubts? I know you said it's hard for you to accept the compliments. Do you ever have doubts of like, are we wasting our time, or are we should, what are we doing? What are we really doing this for?
I guess the first doubt, or the biggest doubt, or maybe the only doubt, was the first ever recording session that we had. And it never got released to the public, and you guys would never hear it. But after that first recording session, I went home and I'm like, yo, I don't think this is it. But I was just like, you got to give it time. It's almost like a new job. Like, you ever had like day one of your job and you really wasn't feeling it, and then 2 weeks later, or whatever the case may be, you have a whole different perspective on it. And that's how it was for me. Each recording, I got more comfortable. The guys that worked with me got more comfortable. We lost a few along the way, and then we replaced them. But Mike G and Vern was always, us three was always there from day one. And we had a couple extras, and it was just overflowing. Guys over talking to each other. It just really didn't mesh, and that's when I thought like this ain't it. Guys voluntarily stepped away. Guys mutually stepped away. So it worked out eventually, to me anyway. I feel like right now we really found our stride. We found our groove. But that was just my biggest doubt when we first got started. I thought, nah, this shit ain't gonna pop off. Not saying that we hot or anything. I'm just saying from there, I just thought like, I don't want to do this anymore.
So how many people did you start with?
I never told.
How many did you start with?
I started with you won't think it's crazy. I started with like five, 6 people. Right? I know, right? You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing, but you thought it was gonna sync well. It didn't work.
Bro,
it was like, and it was like all dudes too.
6 people?
Let's see. It was 5. If you take out Kyle, yeah, it was me, Mike, and Vern, and then it was 2 other dudes. So it was 5. I just threw Kyle in there.
And I know that can be tough because I think about just hanging out with friends or just sitting around the table or something, and there's 5, 6, like that. The higher the numbers get, certain people gonna get drowned out. Some people are just gonna talk the entire time, talking over people, as you said. So I can just imagine that, what chaos that was and what led you to that feeling of like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah, conversation didn't flow well. It was just weird. It was uncomfortable for me. It felt forced, and I never wanted to force dialogue. You know what I mean? Like I just want people to be comfortable and be who they are. So just to get back on Vern, man, the views and opinions of Vern, it isn't the views and opinions of everyone on the Factual Opinion Podcast. I just want to get that out the way. So when Vern says some wild, off the wall ish, that's Vern's mindset. You have to understand, y'all dealing with a monster. He's nuts, man. So I just want to make that clear. The Factual Opinion Podcast, man, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Anchor, a few others that I don't really remember right now. We in talks of making a YouTube, so you get a visual of us. We got to make sure we ain't coming in looking raggedy. You know what I mean? Especially Vern. Ladies looking for Vern, man. You gotta sharpen up, bro. But Factual Opinion Podcast, man, we release every Friday. Typically, releases is out. The episodes are out by noon. So every Friday, so you can enjoy your weekend listening to us. Want to know fun facts about me? Things you may not know about me. I have 9 other siblings. I grew up in a house of my mom and dad had 10 kids between each other. So it may seem like exciting and all that. You're the only child, correct? You're the only child.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even middle child, so you can't even relate to J. Cole. So, I mean, that upbringing was I wouldn't replace my childhood for anything, but it wasn't always easy. You know, when you grow up in like a 3-bedroom house, 6 boys, 4 girls, you know, you do the math. So, but it's cool though. It's fun. Love a lot of experience. This all my siblings are still here, but one, I lost my brother back in 2014. Incident at the beach where he drowned. So rest in peace to my bro Reese. But other than that, man, everybody's still here. Everybody's still strong. So it's cool.
How many years you been married?
But he put me on the spot. It's been 3 years, going on 4. It don't even seem like it's been that long, which is crazy. But yeah, I got married in 2017. So we coming up on 4 years.
Years flying by, don't they?
Yeah, and it don't feel that long, man. It don't feel like that long at all. My daughter will be 3 this September, end of September. So her birthday coming up. If it wasn't for all this COVID, I'd probably take her to Disney because she loves all those Disney characters. But we'll see. We might still try to make something shake. Mm-hmm. And before you go, and you can edit this, before you go, for those who want to know how me and Al linked up, and shout out to Taylor, man. Taylor was on your one of your recent episodes, but we all went to school together. And I think one day I was just like, DABAND from Making the Band from MTV. And I was like, oh, you watched that show? Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I watched that show, man. He was like, yeah, I want to be Chopper when I grow up. And that's how me and Al linked from an MTV show, man. Having class together and just shouting the band, man. So shout out to Al, man. I appreciate you having me on your show, man. I love what you're doing, man. Keep up the good work, man. Your production, your editing skills. I'm jealous. I wish I had the time or, the energy to do so, but I appreciate everything you're doing right now. Thank you for having me on, man. Thank for plugging the Factual Opinion Podcast as well, man.
I would like to say thank you, Silas, for coming on. It's been, a few weeks in the making trying to get you on here, but we finally got you here. So again, y'all go and check out his podcast with Mike and Vern, the Factual Opinions Podcast. Until next time, I'll see y'all.
I'm just trying to set the record straight. If this a fight, then I'm a heavyweight. Super light, I'm in the darkest place. Suit and tie me in a coffin cane. Criticize me if I'm gone away.